We haven't talked enough about decentralized AI, open data, distributed computation, and transparent governance. The things that could actually be what democratizes AI development and put the entire ecosystem onto a new course. So I'm happy to be with a great group of individuals who aren't just talking about it, but actually building it. So could we do a quick little round of intros? We can start with you, Vincent. Just who are you? What are you doing?
Hi, I'm Vincent and the founder of Prime Intellect, basically a peer-to-peer platform for computing intelligence.
Hey, I'm Anna from Vana. We focus on the data piece, so kind of self-sovereign data infrastructure for users to contribute their data to AI models in a privacy-preserving way.
Hello guys, I'm Chi. I'm from Kite AI. We're a platform that focuses on AI ownership and monetization. Essentially, it's building a platform that we can ensure the transparent attribution and fair rewards to the end-to-end AI workload from data to model to agents.
Hey guys, this is Ram from OpenLedger. I'm one of the co-contributors. We are a blockchain network for AI. We enable people to contribute data sets and build specialized AI models. And we use attribution to reward people for the models that are built.
Awesome. Well, welcome everyone. So we are closing out Ethereum San Francisco. So they finally came to San Francisco, and I have been raving about this for too long now, that it's felt different than other conferences in the past, in the fact that the worlds of AI and Web3, largely we've been standing on the same kind of fundamentals and foundations of valuing decentralization and many other topics and values. But for a long time, me coming from the AI world, it's felt like there's been two bubbles, right? Like there's been two bubbles that have not had a lot of overlap. These worlds have just kind of existed in parallel. But Ethereum coming to San Francisco, I'm going to make a small joke about this. If you're in the world of Web3, they kind of refer to themselves as CT, like crypto Twitter, and they refer to the AI and crypto Twitter. So if you're really deep in Web3, they also they refer to the AI world as SF, just San Francisco. They just attribute the city of SF to AI. But for the first time, it actually feels like with things like agents and things like that we're actually starting to have more convergent conversations. So I want to start off with like first principles. What is decentralization versus centralization when it comes to AI? Could I start with you, Anna, actually?
Yeah, I guess on the topic of kind of like SF and this meme of like how Web3 and AI interact, the one that I think best captures the moment is actually the one where like the Web3 people are like, Web3 needs AI, and then AI is like, I don't think about you at all, which is just the current state of things, but obviously it's getting better. And that ties into kind of like why decentralize things. I actually like to frame things in terms of like the properties you want. So like self-sovereignty and censorship resistance, right? So if you think far out, 10 years, we have extremely powerful AI models that can do a lot of economic work. They might also primarily be used as a source of like information, right? And one tangible example there is, do you guys remember when Google Bard kind of added some censorship where if you asked it for a historically accurate picture of a medieval king, it would show you like an Indian woman? And I think a lot of people were like, oh, it's this crazy wokeness of the 2020s. But if we just got our information from AI, that would just become truth, right? So whoever's deciding what data goes into AI and what AI actually believes is basically deciding truth in society and also amassing a huge amount of economic power, right? OpenAI is doing like $3.4 billion in revenue as of last year, all from just having these valuable AI models. So the case for decentralized AI is really, we're going to build this very powerful AI system. And rather than having it controlled by a few companies who both get to determine truth and get to amass a huge amount of economic power, that should be distributed among many. I think that's a high level kind of ideological thought. There's kind of more we can get into probably on this panel from a tactical perspective, right? I think a lot of people agree, high level, we don't want AI to be controlled by one company, but you also have to be tactical about like, okay, what can we do in a decentralized context that you can't do from a centralized perspective? And from Vana's perspective, we focus on really the data piece of that, but we can get into that more later.
Sure. I mean, do we want to give any examples of like what can you do with something that's decentralized that you cannot do with centralized? And or someone wants to do the reverse.
I mean, just as a sort of direct example, where I think numbers can be really helpful, right? So if you look at the leading AI models today, they're trained on around 15 trillion tokens, 15 trillion words, right? Huge amount of information. And if you look at the whole public internet, like you scrape everything. Actually, I love like the Internet Archive. I've never been to this building before, but they help with a lot of that. So
cool.
Great. But if you look at Common Crawl, and then you look at FineWeb, which is the high quality subset of it that people actually train on, that's about 15 trillion words as well. So the leading AI models today have actually fully exhausted all the training data that we have access to. AI researchers call that the data wall. And I think that is the very tactical example of like, okay, we're out of public data. How do you get access to private data? You can buy it from companies, right? Companies are doing well doing that. Reddit's earning $200 million from selling data. Apple's buying a lot of data. But our approach and kind of the decentralized approach that I think works really well is actually having users directly contribute their data. So similar to how when you park your car in a parking lot, like the parking lot doesn't own your car, right? It's still yours. You can always take it back. When you put your data in a platform, it's still legally yours. So you can go get your Instagram data, your Twitter data, any information you've contributed, emails, like all your writing, and you can actually pool that across all the different walled gardens of big tech. And if you have 100 million users who do that, which is obviously a big number, we're like 1% of the way there, then you can get to 450 trillion words of training data, which is like 30 times larger than any single centralized company could do. And you really can't do this in a centralized context, right? Apple is not going to collaborate with Google and OpenAI and every single other partner because they can't even legally pool their users' data. So I think that's like the case for decentralized AI actually winning from a tactical perspective beyond that ideology.
Absolutely. And like, let's actually go over to Ram. How else can we use Web3 to incentivize people to contribute more quality data and perhaps build their own specialized models?
Yeah, I think there are two ways, like always, the decentralization has been used, right? One, you find sort of like an alternate universe. Like there are centralized players who build a certain product and you create like a decentralized version of that. And then you use decentralization for bootstrapping or like providing resources. I take more on the second piece, like not everything has to be decentralized. Like how can we use decentralization to bring in more resources? How can we enable people to contribute resources and get rewarded for that, right? And especially AI, if you take a look at it, we are in the very initial stages. AI is more generalized now as larger language models, right? As Anna was telling, like most of the larger language models are trained on internet data. This has very generic information. But actually, once AI becomes much more bigger and once AI is getting used in various sectors, you would want to access a lot of proprietary data sets, right? Data sets that are owned by people, data sets that are owned by organizations. We want them to go ahead and contribute that. So Web3 could be a great way for them to contribute and get rewarded for that, right? And also make sure that their contribution still has them remaining ownership on the data, right? Still has them remaining ownership on the data, but getting paid as this data gets accessed by all the AI. And that's what we want to enable. We want people to like contribute data sets and build models out of that, specialized AI models, and use verifiability for them to see how data is used in a model, right? If I contribute a data set, if it's used in a model, I'll be able to see it on chain that my data was used in this particular model, and I'm going to get rewarded so much for that usage, right? And then on the other side, we also want to make sure all these entire the contribution to the model usage to the rewarding is on chain, is verifiable, and it enables trustlessness. That's where Web3 comes in, right? You want to if you want to bring people across the globe and contribute something, you want to have trustlessness. They can't believe in the concept that, okay, I believe in RAM, I'm going to contribute data for that. They should believe in the code. They should believe the trustlessness to be there. So that's what you want to use Web3 as well, to bring in that verifiability, to showcase to people how your data is getting used. Another one is that, again, coming back to the first point, how can we reward people? Like how can we use crypto as a way to reward people? Because if I'm going to let people get paid using fiat, then I'm going to need to pass through a lot of reptates. I can't like fund someone who's based on Nigeria, another one based on Korea. It cannot happen at all. But crypto is a gateway for people to get rewarded, right? So I guess that's how we need to see Web3 as well. It should complement the existing AI technology, not really look at like fighting against them, and like use Web3 primitives to make AI our own. Like how internet happened. If you take a look at when internet happened, it was centralized, but then there was open source platforms like HTTPS, which is actually natively decentralized, right? That's what enabled World Wide Web to happen, and that's how we need to see AI as well. How can we enable Web3 to like build better AI, our own AI? So that's what we talk about. Yeah.
And what are some of the most promising models of that? It can kind of get messy in the worlds of data provenance and tracking and things like that. What are some things?
Yeah, I'll give you an example, right? So there is a team which is building like a solidity model on top of us. Cursor, which is one of the larger language model for programming, does not understand solidity. Solidity is a very niche programming languages. Like not many people have this data. The data is not available on the internet. So we went ahead and enabled a bunch of devs to build this on a platform where they collected solidity data sets, codes, code descriptions, and a model is being built, and we just open source that. And now whenever this model gets used, we will reward back to the data contributors. Very similarly, there are more programming languages and natural languages that humans speak, where you don't have the data on the internet. It is among people. So that could be a great incentive to have more models on various niche languages. Another one I see is finance. A lot of finance data is not online, is not on the internet. Like how people trade and all that is not on the internet. So that could be a great sector that we're concentrating on as well. So finance models. Healthcare, again, a lot of people own healthcare data sets. It's usually proprietary. People are not willing to give it. But they've incentivized, they're willing to give that. So that's another sector that we're looking at as well.
Yeah. And all these things sound very promising and they're all in effect. Maybe, Chi, I'm going to ask a weird one for you, but can this actually work? Decentralized data ownership. Can this be as effective as big tech currently is and having kind of us in their grips? Like what in a world do you see this kind of being a probable, a likely outcome that we can actually achieve this as underdogs?
Good question. Yes and no. Actually, that's come to me as a more fundamental infrastructure problem. A little bit background about like how I was building or involved in the AI industry before. I did my PhD in Berkeley for machine learning, and then actually the first company I worked at was a closed AI company, it's an automated machine learning platform, and then moved to then. That is where we recognize, in order for AI to be adopted in industry, data is super important. The data silo problem, data quality problem, and everything is actually the huge blocker for especially enterprises to adopt AI in their workflows and everything. And then after that company, I joined Databricks. Right now, one of the biggest data and AI infrastructure company in the industry, to lead data engineering products there, which, by the way, is relevant to what you asked about whether it's feasible or not. And now it's very fascinating that now we're in this panel to talk about decentralized AI and decentralized, hopefully, like a data problem. So when it comes to yes, that means if we leverage blockchain correctly as an infrastructure and store the things that's important to store on chain. For example, like the ownership of, let's say, the data and some of the attribution information, and even like the license agreement or what license those data usage should be under. Those type of things, it will be very good. But if we are trying to bring, let's say, right now, the contribution or like a real data fetch on chain, then that will be extremely hard. So that's why even when we think about like decentralized data storage, like what IPFS and some other people are trying to solve here, it's a great solution to bring more, trustlessness and global distribution into the process. But if we think about compare this to centralized solution, so what, let's say, AWS S3 or Databricks type of company offer, then it's still a far way to go when it comes to, we want to fetch data globally and everything, then the cost and the efficiency will be a lot, still underperformant compared to the one. So again, I think the most feasible way to push decentralized AI to forward and at least have something feasible is to start with having the critical information being stored and tracked on chain, and a lot of the computational heavy stuff still happened off-chain. But again, even if it's happened off-chain, there's still a way for you to add more trustlessness and verifiability in the process, such as, like what, for example, like an optimistic roll-up type of solution that to allow people to start a challenge type of thing in the process. So again, yeah, I think from an infrastructure underlying perspective, it's still a long way to go. But at least the blockchain itself, as an immutable ledger, indeed can bring a lot of trustless collaboration and verifiability in the process, which is a great technology to push the AI collaboration and data collaboration and monetization moving forward.
I would throw in like a kind of like maybe contrarian counter that I think like pre-training is dead, as Ilya said. Data is kind of like dead in an organic sense, and we're already way past beyond like kind of like scaling with organic data, like kind of like user-generated data. And in a sense, like more Reddit data won't lead to AGI or superintelligence. Like having individual users contribute data is very, very like doesn't really scale. Like you do want like whatever to not onboard like one user after each other. You want to onboard like every like user using code agents or something. So my point is maybe it's like ultimately scaling laws are true. We are scaling through compute, and we're now scaling reasoning models through synthetic data, and we're won't reach like superhuman like level of like intelligence with human data, like by definition, but much rather through compute, through basically self-play strategies. So I think there's like specific domains where we actually haven't run out of data, but like we haven't been able to use the data, like basically for say robotics. Like we don't have superhuman robotics probably anytime soon, and but there's like a bunch of like real world data we can use, but actually much more even synthetic data and kind of like self-play again, like to, for example, get to robotics. So I think actually my point is like to an extent that compute is all that matters. It's like data is kind of like behind us, and we are basically only bottlenecked by new like scale up in compute and scale up in algorithms. I think it's kind of like what the history of like AI teaches us, and kind of like the bitter lesson from kind of like the inventor of reinforcement learning, which is also kind of like now the paradigm again to move AI progress. So I think there's actually maybe like a contrarian case where like the data wall wasn't really a problem. We fit it, but like we've also passed it. And I think like ultimately it might not be the bottleneck that some people make it out to be. While ultimately it's still user generated data. Like user interactions with ChatGPT are incredibly valuable. It's like where do they like drop off in attention, like what's kind of like the answers they're happy with or unhappy with. Like this kind of data I think is actually much more valuable. It's just like the data and the interactions with like AI models.
Is there any...
Just to add to that, I also agree with that. I don't think like user-generated data is the only solution. Like I would go with like the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of the data is usually among businesses which have like proprietary data sets we need to get access to, because most of the user-generated data is on the internet, and that's already grabbed by these large language models, and they've trained these models with that. What really kind of like brings a change is like how can we use business data and also a certain part of like synthetic data generation, right? Because we've also explored that. Like for example, like most of models that is used in Tesla is trained on synthetic data. How else could you actually train that model to drive through various scenarios? You need to generate synthetic data for that. Pretty much goes with autonomous robots and all that. So it's always large amounts of proprietary data and synthetic data that goes into a model. And about 20% of that is user-generated data, which adds that additional value that is there, like the human touch to it. That's what makes the models to be smarter. So I would say it's a combination of more proprietary data set, majorly, and then a bit of like user-generated data that has to be added.
I think something a lot of people miss when they think about synthetic data is kind of like what is the human data that actually people started with to generate it. So if you look at DeepSeek, for example, one of the ways that they overcame the data wall is by first starting with really high quality data and then generating synthetic data from that. And they actually hired a bunch of math and computer science PhDs to generate data. And like their founder himself was literally like generating this super high quality reasoning data. If you look at their parent company, you can actually see job postings for these like data collection, kind of data generation engineers. And I think what that shows us is like, this data wall is both an issue of like quality and quantity, where you want to figure out, how do I get that super high quality data? I think there's a ton of debate of like, okay, is it compute that's the big breakthrough? Is it research? Is it data? Our view in the long run is that it's very much data, which obviously we can kind of debate all the time. One thing I would call out about compute is I think that it is a much easier like capital expenditure to actually underwrite if you think about some of the incentives for these hyperscalers right now. And it is, yeah, it's sort of like something that I think a lot of people want to believe, which is, okay, suppose we could spend $100 billion on a training run from a compute perspective. I want that to work. You know, and I think that's really how the big AI players see it today. So I think I would just call out that incentive as a cautionary tale to thinking it's just compute that matters.
Yeah, and I would add that basically to an extent, like obviously you kind of like need all three like aspects, like from data, be it synthetic data, like extremely valuable proprietary data, compute algorithmic breakthroughs. I think one actually key piece is like to your point is that the most valuable data is sitting, say, like in hedge funds, right? Like which are hoarding this data, buying it for many billions of dollars, like analyzing all of the like real-time information in the world, like satellite data. They won't just like sell it to some like blockchain network, right? It's like they're making hundreds of billions with that data, and they'll obviously further like internally make use of that data. I like maybe my caution is more in the sense that I think the most valuable data is like very hard to unlock because people are making a lot of money having that data, and I think they'll use AI to unlock that value. Like even like the state has like incredible like amounts of like data that they're deploying AI on to whatever, like do intelligence better, like literal like kind of like state intelligence. But I think like this data won't reach the public domain or AI models anytime soon. So I think that's maybe like one counter is that like
I agree to that. Oh, maybe you can add. Yeah, let you say.
Yeah. So one thing I just want to add a concrete example to actually also give a point on why just relying on synthetic data is not going to work is when it's again come to the quality of the data. Actually, in one of the podcasts Elon Musk had a few months ago, he break down a bit on how they're using how they train the Grok 2. And the one thing he mentioned is that they purposefully actually removed all the public internet data after 2022 because there are so many fake data generated on internet that in the end of the day, including those data, have already degraded the performance of the foundation model they're training. So then they have to fall back to find those real human-generated, high-quality content and data to train the model. So in the end of the day, it doesn't matter if it's a synthetic data or human-generated data or whatever the data sources come from. It's what matters is like how those data is high quality and representative of the pattern that you really want to find or you really want to train the model on. So that is actually the key here.
I think the incentive you called out of basically like companies that have valuable data don't want to share it, right, is exactly what goes on. And I actually think there were like 3 AI video companies in SF, and they're all kind of like racing each other to get the best training data set. And their engineers are like, okay, what do you think they're scraping? What do you think? And then you're trying to get what other people don't have. I think the real unlock for data ownership is that you actually don't need a business's permission to get the data, right? The user can just go and get it themselves. And so you're able to kind of sidestep that incentive, which to date, I think has led to not that much adoption of a lot of kind of decentralized data type approaches.
No, just to add to that, I think we are all talking pretty much the same point. It comes down to like the model that we are actually building. A certain model would need a lot of like user-generated data to make it much better in the field that is being built on. A model like, let's say, that's built for autonomous robots might need more synthetic data, less of the human-generated data. And certain model which are niches, like the programming language model that we spoke about, might need data sets that comes from proprietary businesses that actually own the data, which needs to come forward and contribute. So it always goes down to the model that people are looking to build and what kind of data sets that you want to collect for that particular model. So it's a very case-by-case driven solutions that we need to look for.
I think one thing, like I would add even more, like looking into the future is that like also what we did recently and what OpenAI and everyone is doing is actually generate really synthetic data with verification, like basically saying code and math. Let's like check if for example, the reasoning that get you to like the solution is correct to basically scale towards like superhuman reasoning. And I think my ultimate point is like really that I think from the like for the next like 10 years, I think what will get increasingly important is basically strategies to scale to like superhuman data, and that can't really come from humans. So for example, it's like if you want to like analyze all of the sciences and like understand every piece of whatever, like every molecule or every like piece of science, like you do need kind of like a machine approach, and I think at some point basically it's like hard for the humans to keep up being able to generate valuable data. And I think it even leads us into this future. It's like the models are already like at pretty good levels. It's like we really need basically ways to smash through kind of like those human limitations to reach like much more superhuman data.
The human limitations are interesting. I was talking to someone from one of the big labs AI teams, and they were saying they actually don't want to train on bio publications because there's like errors in like basically publications. It's wrong. And so if you train from that, you end up with the wrong stuff. And then the question becomes, okay, then what is the right source of truth, right? Is it generated by humans? Is it some kind of collaboration? But yeah, it is interesting that some of this human error, we don't want to propagate that. How do we actually do that?
Yeah, and I think it's like actually there was some cool experiments in this direction of AIs already being able to verify some like human papers, for example. It's like a lot of them have errors, even very famous papers, and like AI spots those errors very quickly, and then you can kind of like ascertain the quality level of like each paper actually through kind of like checks and verifications to know basically which papers are wrong or like outright like fraudulent like scientific like foundational papers like in Alzheimer's or whatever, where then like a lot of the other science is like basing their assumptions on like completely wrong science. And I think that's actually like one of the biggest values for AI is like to ultimately improve our like epistemics and our like more like scientific corpus.
So we are coming to a close here, and I like that we're trying to land this plane with superintelligence. Vincent, I wanted to make a shameless plug because I've recently partnered up with Prime Intellect, and I wanted to kind of try to end by asking everyone in a sentence or less how you actually define AGI or ASI. Just quickly, because it's another thing like decentralization, like these terms that we kind of throw around. So maybe Ram, I'll just end with you.
Yeah, AGI is basically like achieving human level general intelligence, right? That's what people call AGI. But I think AGI will not happen to be like very, yeah. You want to say something?
One sentence.
One sentence.
Yeah,
okay,
one sentence.
Okay, one sentence. AGI, I think, will be not generalized. It will be very specialized to one particular sector. I think for Tesla, with Tesla, we have already achieved AGI with autonomous vehicles. So that's my take. So
okay,
yeah, it's really
trying to get to a standard definition of it. All right, Chi.
AGI to me means from day one, a human actually will be paired with a super intelligent, almost like a coach, life coach, and a person who can do more things than human, and then you can really do more focused on creative stuff rather than the daily work that everybody, including us, are doing right now.
Cool. Okay.
I think most intelligence and economic value is produced by AI would be kind of the most concise definition.
And Vincent, I'm not going to ask you for your definition. I'm going to ask you, this is our Prime Intellect. Vincent, could you explain where we are and maybe explain this really quick?
Like, I think basically, like maybe just like in advance, it's like I think people are almost like, a better way to put it is like underestimating of like how wild the next like 100 or 200 years might turn out, and like the next like centuries ahead.
Eternal Y2K cultural time trap forever. Is that what you're saying?
No.
No?
Like so basically, I think maybe my very short answer is that I think like we might literally hit kind of like superintelligence like within the next decades, and I think that's actually quite a big deal in terms of like how it changes our world. And I think like there's like a bunch of factors that I think people would think are like super intelligent that we are probably like on the verge of reaching. Like,
lots to think about. Okay, well, we are out of time, so thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.